My dad had one of the most unsettling jobs you could imagine during his college years. He worked the night shift at a morgue. This was back in the 1960s, a time when technology wasn't what it is today, and the atmosphere of those long, cold nights was thick with silence and death. The kind of place where your footsteps echo louder than they should, and the flickering fluorescent lights cast long shadows that play tricks on your mind. One night, while training a new hire, something happened that neither of them could ever forget. It started like any other night. They were moving a body down one of the morgue's endless, dim hallways. The body, just another unfortunate soul, was draped under a white sheet, its weight pressing down on the gurney. The wheels of the gurney squeaked against the linoleum floor, cutting through the deafening quiet. The trainee was nervous, obviously. Who wouldn't be? The place reeked of death and fear, the walls practically whispering at you as you passed. But he didn't expect what was coming next. As they wheeled the body along, everything seemed fine, until the sheet covering the corpse began to shift. At first, it was subtle, a twitch, a movement you might mistake for the wind, if only there were windows in that godforsaken place. Then, without warning, the body jerked violently and sat up. The trainee gasped, his eyes wide with disbelief. But the terror didn't stop there. The corpse stood up. Rigid, pale, and impossibly cold, it wobbled for a moment, as though adjusting to its new, grotesque posture. Then, with a quickness that defied its deathly state, the corpse turned toward the trainee and slapped him across the face. The sound of the slap echoed down the hallway, snapping the trainee out of his stupor. His eyes bulged in terror as he stumbled backward, clutching his face. Blood drained from his skin as he processed what just happened. This body, this dead thing, had slapped him. Without another word, he turned and ran. He ran faster than he ever had in his life, his shoes squeaking and slipping on the cold floor. The gurney crashed to the ground behind him, the body collapsing with a sickening thud as it hit the floor. But the trainee didn't stop to look. He didn't even stop to breathe. He burst through the morgue doors and into the night, never looking back. He quit on the spot. My dad stayed behind, his mind spinning. He'd heard of post-mortem movements, muscle twitches, even corpses sitting up due to gas build-up in the body. But this was different. The corpse had stood up, slapped the guy, and then collapsed. No science could explain that. My dad knew that this was no simple spasm. To this day, he wonders what kind of dark force was at work in that morgue that night. It was a moment he never spoke of again, but it never left him. It started like any other quiet weekend. My best friend's parents were out of town, and she had the whole house to herself. A peaceful night, just her, some takeout, and a couple of movies. She wasn't afraid to be alone. She had grown up in that house, and it had always been her safe space. After finishing dinner and watching a few shows, she decided to head to bed. She brushed her teeth, locked the front door, or so she thought, and crawled under the covers. She turned her back to the closet, pulled the blankets up to her chin, and closed her eyes. That's when she heard it. The faintest sound, the creak of a door slowly opening. At first, she thought she imagined it. She lay there, frozen, her heart beginning to race. She didn't dare turn around. The sound of the closet door opening was so quiet, but unmistakable. It was slow, deliberate, as if whoever or whatever was inside didn't want to be heard. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of it. The closet door had been shut when she went to bed, hadn't it? She tried to calm herself, convincing herself it was just the house settling, or a breeze, or anything but what it truly was. Then, the soft shuffle of footsteps, footsteps too quiet for comfort, moved across the room, stopping right behind her. She squeezed her eyes shut, her entire body stiff with fear. She could feel the presence looming behind her, feel the cold air being displaced as something moved closer, closer. And then she felt it, a hand, cold, clammy, and impossibly gentle. It brushed through her hair, slowly, almost affectionately. The hand moved down her face, fingers lingering on her cheek, as if savouring the moment. Her heart pounded so violently, she thought she might faint, but she didn't move. She couldn't move. She lay there, pretending to be asleep, hoping that whoever it was wouldn't do anything worse. After what felt like an eternity, the hand lifted. The footsteps retreated. The soft click of the door closing signaled that the intruder had left the room. The moment she was sure she was alone, she jumped out of bed, locked the door, and grabbed her phone with trembling hands. First, she called her boyfriend, begging him to come over. Then, she called her parents. Finally, she called the police. When the officers arrived, they uncovered something horrifying. Someone had been sneaking into her house for months. He had been entering through an old dog's door they didn't think to secure because they didn't have a dog. This man had been watching her from the shadows, stalking her. They found his tent hidden in the woods behind the house. Inside, they found hours of footage of her sleeping, along with pieces of her clothing, trophies he had taken without her noticing. He had been inside her house, inside her life for months. There was a woman I used to see regularly at the local pub. I didn't know her well, but we'd share a few laughs here and there, casual banter. She had a warm energy, always smiling and making jokes. I remember one day in particular, she was there with her friend, laughing at some joke, her laughter filling the air. It was a normal day, or at least it should have been. That night, she missed her bus home. Instead of waiting for the next one, she ended up at a different pub, somewhere unfamiliar. That's where she met them. 2 men. They seemed harmless enough, just a couple of guys offering to help her get home. But she didn't know that these men were obsessed with serial killers. They had been planning something dark, something evil. They took her back to their house. What happened next was a nightmare no one could have imagined. These men didn't just kill her. They butchered her. They cut her body into pieces and spent the following week scattering her remains in plastic bags throughout the city, hiding them in bushes, under rocks, anywhere they thought they wouldn't be found. But they were caught. The police found them quickly, thank God. But it didn't erase the horror of what they had done. The day she disappeared, I had seen her. She was outside the pub, laughing about something so insignificant, a pigeon that was waddling around. I even have a video from that day. In it, she makes a joke, hours before her gruesome murder. She had no idea what was coming. None of us did. Now, every time I think about her, I can't shake the feeling of how fragile life is. One missed bus, one wrong turn, and she was gone. Her life taken by monsters who saw her as nothing more than prey. The randomness of it still haunts me. Life can change in an instant, and for her, it did.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and check out my other horror stories on the screen now. And until next time, sleep tight.